Tonight, Baylor can do something very, very rare, and that is knock a team out of March Madness before we even get to Selection Sunday. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor. I'm your host, Cam Stewart from ESPN Central Texas. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. The Bears finally have, after the double bye, their quarterfinal matchup, and it is the Bears and the Bearcats, and why Cincinnati is one of the most dangerous teams in the country. That's coming up on this show, as well as I will reveal who Baylor's X Factor is as we head into postseason basketball. And the women have an idea, not a concrete idea, but an idea of where they're going in the NCAA tournament. And it's a matchup we've seen before in March Madness for the Lady Bears, but it's not quite as easy this year. But starting with the men out in Kansas City, they have their quarterfinal matchup. It is Baylor against Cincinnati. The Bearcats all over Kansas last night, winning by 20 points, 72-52. And I know the circumstances are wild around that game, but it is really weird at this time of year and in this tournament to be saying Kansas just got bummed out by 20 points. Like, that is still not something that just rolls off the tongue. But Cincinnati goes in against a shorthanded Kansas team and really takes it to them. And by the way, Bearcats have been without their center too, so it's not like they had this all-star team going against, the hapless Kansas Jayhawks. But Cincinnati, as we've seen all season long, they will beat the crap out of you physically. Maybe not on the scoreboard. Well, they did last night, but they will just go right at your chest, man. And they needed no time to adjust to the physicality of the Big 12. There's a talent gap for sure. I mean, they've got some players, but it's not the most talented team in the Big 12. But I mean this as a compliment. They will bring you down to their level. And against Kansas last night, they hit him in the mouth and were up 13 at the half, which, by the way, Kansas made this thing a game. I mean, they had it at a 2-point game at one point in the second half. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Like the lift of the home crowd, the lift of having Kansas written across your jersey, all that mystique and the athleticism of KJ Adams and the leadership of DeJuan Harris, it's going to carry them. It didn't. They just didn't have enough quality. And you saw it in the first half was kind of a microcosm of the game because Kansas did the dirty work. They did all the hard work. They got good enough looks. Just couldn't make them. And that's what was kind of the surprising part, was not they weren't overwhelmed. Kansas teams almost never are, but they weren't overwhelmed. They played their offense, but when you don't have McCullough and Dickinson out there, those misses become amplified. They stacked up one on the other. And the big thing for me wasn't just them missing shots. It was the decisive edge, not only in physicality, but just in brute height from Cincinnati. Like they Kansas really struggled on the boards. They were minus 12 in that category. Cincinnati pulled down 51 rebounds and 17 offensive rebounds. Bearcats plus 8 in that. That is something that and ended up taking 12 more shots. But Kansas shoots 34% from the floor. And you think, well, that's terrible. That sunk them. Well, Cincinnati only shot 38% and won by 20. And I don't want to go on Kansas too much longer, but I know they're missing 2 All-Americans. Like, that's kind of the start and the finish of it. But I think it's not just that. I think there is a lack of quality by Kansas standards on this team. And my poor guy, Nick Timberlake, my fellow South Shore guy, Braintree, Massachusetts native, I just can't hit the broadside of a barn. And Furphy gave you nothing in this game. Harris can do all he can do without shooting. They just don't. And KJ Adams left it all out there. He actually had a great game, but they do not have and have not had all season the depth to win a game when even one of their stars is out. They really struggled when it was just McCullough out of the games. And now you take him and Dickinson out. Obviously, most teams, if they have two All-Americans, are going to struggle when those two are not playing. But this was not just the two guys being out. This was a significant lack of quality that's been marring Kansas all year, but really played out in this game against Cincinnati. So before we get into more just Baylor specific stuff, how does Baylor go at Cincinnati? Because this was a tight game when these two played at the Foster Pavilion back in January, which was, I think, just 2 full months ago. I want to say right around the 14th is about the date. And 14th of January, that is. And Baylor wins by 3, in which Cincinnati had 3 good looks at the basket at the end of the game. So that was no gimme. Cincinnati was up at the half in that one. And the big thing that Baylor switched, which was really the first time we saw it this year, zone defense. And they exposed Cincinnati's lack of three-point shooting. And Lukosius did not have a good game in that one. He's normally a knockdown shooter. He shoots over 40% from 3. And since he wasn't much better last night, 35% for the game from 3. Now Kansas shot 15%, so that's way worse. But I'm interested to see if that's the way they go again, because that way you not only push them out to the 3-point arc, but you limit how physical they can be. And I'm just intrigued because I think Baylor's a more physical team than they were back in January, but it's not something that I would say would necessarily benefit them. But absolutely, they are a much more physical team. They have not lost games because of a lack of physicality really since then. BYU maybe, that BYU game on the road. But I'm interested to see who steps up in that department, because it was maybe the second best performance of the season for Josh O in that game. Remember, he had 10 points off the bench. And I think like 8 or 9 rebounds. He was close to a double-double. So we've seen Baylor get at them this year. It was not easy. They used a big second half to get there. But this Cincinnati team is not one that you can put to bed easily. That's all I'll say. Baylor should win the game. And it's Cincy's 3rd game in 3 days. But they are a desperate basketball team, and they need this win. The 2 wins look great. One of them's a quad 1 against Kansas, but I think they need 2 quad 1s to get off the bubble and into the tournament. So Baylor has a chance tonight to knock them out of the tournament before we even get the selections and the seeds. So in that regard, I am fascinated because we have not seen Baylor play well at all against desperate teams this year. Every time I say, this team that is going against Baylor really needs a win, that team gets a win. And Jalen Bridges talked about this week about how last year they looked ahead too far to the championship game. They really want to win this thing. They're going to take it one game at a time. It's time to prove it tonight, because Cincinnati needs this win way more than you do. And I'm not one who is going to be devastated if Baylor loses. I mean, I never want them to lose as being a Baylor fan. But if these players are going to challenge themselves, like Jalen Bridges said, then absolutely I have expectations going into this game. And you as the Baylor fan should be critical if it doesn't go well. That's all I'll say. Like if these guys are challenging themselves and they come up short at the first hurdle, then yeah, that might be a red flag going into the tournament versus 2 days ago, before I heard Jalen Bridges ever say this, I wasn't taking it very serious. So interested to see how Baylor matches Cincinnati physically, if they can. That is the big test for me. But they will have one of their X factors back into the lineup. And back in the lineup for the second straight game. So I probably gave it away there, but I think you guys know who I am picking as Baylor's X factor as we head into the biggest basketball games of the year. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the Big 12 Conference Tournament trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, those LED headlights, any of those. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber. You're not burning cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices that you love, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. Once again, that is ebaymotors.com. Langston Love. Remember him? So do I. Big fan. I'm not going to do the What Love Machine song that Chris Spatola does. I'm not going to do that. But you appreciate him. I appreciate him. We love Langston Love. And it was great to see him back in the lineup and playing significant minutes against Tech. And as much as I dump on this tournament and how it really doesn't mean much for Baylor, the one thing that I think it actually really helps them with is getting reps back for Langston Love. And he has kind of gone under the radar since he was out in those couple of games, those couple of weeks. Gone under the radar in terms of the impact that he gives Baylor. I mean, there were nights this season, not all that long ago, where you would have said Langston Love might be the best player on the team. And he gives them so much, and he gives them so much off the bench. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was averaging, again, no starts this year, 25 minutes per game, 11 points a game, so still in the double digits, and 49% from three. Almost anybody in America would kill to have a guy like that off the bench. Okay. And I rightfully, looking at the game log, said, he had a couple of games in there where he didn't play a lot or he was still coming back from that injury. There was the BYU game where he re-aggravated his injury. So I'm like, hey, let's look at the numbers he had before that initial ankle injury. So the 8 conference games that I'm looking at. So switch the calendar to January, toughest conference in America. Before he got that injury, he was averaging 14 points a game. And he is top 10 in the entire conference in true shooting percentage. This guy is just a knockdown, drag-out scorer who can also do some other things off the bench. I think what I love the most about him is he's probably Baylor's most physical player, not just most physical guard, but he is going to get down in the greasy, grimy areas. He is going to be after those loose balls, those 50-50 balls that at times this year, Baylor has just not been automatic with. Sometimes, but when he's in the lineup, they're a lot better with it. And even when he was out a couple of those games, they were still good. But he is a guy who is not afraid to get the floor burn. And you need someone like that. So to have someone like that who can switch on defense and score on offense, that is a really, really valuable player that I don't think a lot of people appreciate. I know we as Baylor fans do, but I don't think a lot of people that aren't Baylor fans appreciate what Langston Love brings to a team. And for Baylor to keep pace without him, when you look back at the numbers and you look back at what he gives you, for Baylor to keep pace without him in the toughest conference in the country is really impressive. And I'm just looking at the things he could do for you. He had that game against TCU. I know it goes to triple overtime, but 11 points off the bench already, that's good. But also 10 rebounds in that game. That shows you right there at the guard position how physical he can play. And I watched the what do you call that? The follow on Baylor Plus, where they do like all behind the scenes stuff during games. And Scott Drew during the Kansas win was talking about, being more physical, specifically with Hunter Dickinson. And I know this isn't going to directly relate to Langston Love because he's not usually guarding a center, but he was talking about physicality in terms of Hunter Dickinson shouldn't even catch the ball against you guys. You should be boxing him out of bounds. If we get a foul, so what? He's not getting an easy basket. And that counts for anyone on the court, not just the big guys like Hunter Dickinson. And it just made me think instantly Langston Love, because you never have that problem when he's on the court. He will box a guy out into next week, man, if that's what you're telling him to do. And he just makes so many winning plays for this team. It's not something that comes up in the box score, although he does have good box score numbers, but he makes a ton of winning plays. And one of the things I've pointed out quite a bit throughout, since he's been injured, win or loss, is Baylor very rarely wins the bench scoring when he's not out there. And we talk about how important depth is, especially when it comes to the NCAA tournament. And this is something I've flip-flopped back and forth on, but I am in on depth being really important. He gives you a major advantage in terms of bench against bench. And a team is only as good as the last guy on their bench. And when your sixth guy is that good, that's setting up like a pretty good bench squad that the Bears have. And I'm telling you, he would have won Sixth Man of the Year if he hadn't gotten hurt. And I'll put that up against anything. And Scott Drew actually said this week just how important it is for Langston to come back and get integrated back into this squad.
With Langston, it's really important, not only for him to get those minutes in rep, but more importantly, our guys to get used to playing with him again. I think a lot of times it's always about the person coming back, but you remember you got a whole team that's been playing without him, and they got to figure that out again too. So as you adjust to new roles, new rotations, expectations, whatnot, obviously we're a better team with them, and the sooner we got him back, the better. But Dave did a great job making sure we didn't try to get him back too early, and was cautious on that part of it.
So yeah, that's the thing I'm looking for in this tournament. Win or lose, you don't want to get anybody else hurt. But to me, the biggest thing is reintegrating Langston Love back into this team. He plays over 20 minutes against Tech, and he had some good moments. But I like the point that Scott made in there of not only do we need to get him back for himself, but we need his teammates to be able to play with him again and be able to be that cohesive unit that they were before his injury, a very effective, cohesive unit. And while Langston showed some good things on Saturday against Tech, there were times where the team just didn't look like a cohesive unit. And so one of the big things in this tournament is to get him back and integrated, because he is absolutely an X factor for you in March. There are games where, Lord knows we've seen it, where Jacoby Walter isn't shooting well, or Ray J. Dennis isn't shooting well, or Jade Nunn isn't shooting well. Thankfully, we haven't had many games where those three guys are slumping in the same contest, or two of those three. But good teams like you face in the NCAA tournament take away options. So Langston Love coming in as another option who can give you double digits off the bench and shoot almost 50% from three. You need that guy. You played pretty well without him, but you need that guy out there. So I am looking at the full integration of Langston Love heading into March Madness. And I know the women's team is looking ahead towards Sunday as they just practice. They don't need to wait on the conference tournament or anything. And they have quite an intriguing matchup that they could be hitting come the first round of the tournament. But first, I got to tell you about Amazon Fire TV, another proud sponsor of today's Locked On Baylor episode. That's how I'm following the tournament. I don't know about y'all, but I cut the cord on cable a few years ago because I've got my Fire Stick, and it is my lifeline. I actually bring it with me on vacation. So, but Fire TV is like your one-stop shop, okay? It's your destination for your sports. So the live games, also highlights, analysis in there too. They'll have the studio shows. It offers an amazing viewing experiences with your smart TVs, because I know almost all of you have them, as well as that Fire TV stick, which I use to plug into an existing TV, which has access to movies, TV, plenty of it free. So whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which is coming up next month, or what we're tuning into, March Madness, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. It recently created TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, and it's all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of those major pro leagues and college conferences as well. So not to mention the great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, anything you're consuming on TV, you're going to do it on Amazon Fire TV, and you're going to do it much better. So check out our Fire TV channels or Fire TV and Alexa devices. So if you haven't checked those out, you need to. Trust me on this one. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. That is amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. To the women's side of things, bracketology is in there, and it's more or less set, because we, with the women's game, have almost a week that we wait from the end of the conference tournament into the NCAA Tournament and Selection Sunday, which is March 17th, which is this Sunday. There's a live show at, oh God, I told you I was going to find out if it was the Farrell or the Foster. I don't know yet. It's public, but go to it. It's the Baylor Women's Basketball Selection Show. They're going to have a little get together there. Fans are going to be invited. So highly recommend checking that out. But looking at the bracketology of things, I think Baylor just missed a chance to host with losing in the tournament quarterfinals in the Big 12 tournament, where they lost to Iowa State, who ended up losing in the final. So with that, they're not going to be able to move up to a 4 seed. In fact, Joe Lunardi right now has them as the 6th seed in the South Bend region. Trust me, man. Northern Indiana is lovely this time of year. It is a great campus over at Notre Dame, but which has an interesting matchup. So right now they're the 6th seed, and the 11th seed has to go through a play-in game, and they have that as Marquette versus Texas A&M. So you could have a little Brazos Valley battle in South Bend, Baylor against the A&M Aggies. Of course, we're still waiting on that to see, whether those will be the two teams, if those two teams are even in, and who's going to win that contest. But obviously, Baylor would be the higher seed no matter what, no matter who they play in that first round, being the 6th. And that would match them up with Notre Dame as the 3 seed and the host. This, to me, is a frightening matchup. Baylor's not going to be the favorite in most second-round matchups, being the 6th seed, but specifically Notre Dame, for my money, is the best 3 seed in the entire bracket. They are as hot as any team in women's college basketball. As a matter of fact, they were going to get in anyway, but they were the automatic qualifier because they just won the ACC tournament. It goes deeper than that. They have won 8 games in a row, and the last 5 wins of those 8 in a row came against ranked teams. 3 of those 5 wins came by double digits, all against ranked teams. Hannah Hidalgo is the taliswoman there. 23 points a game. They have the best margin of victory in the entire conference at 18 points a game, averaging almost 80. And they are the best 3-point shooting team and 3-point defending team in the entire ACC. It's not like the last 2 times Baylor faced Notre Dame in meaningful NCAA tournament games, which were national championship games in 2012 and 2019. Baylor is not at the level that they were then, and Notre Dame, while not being a 1 seed, is very good and capable and red hot. 5 straight wins to end the season against ranked teams. That is outstanding. That is, like, I am not excited about a potential Baylor Notre Dame matchup. Of course, the great history is on Baylor's side with the 2 national championship victories over Muffet McGraw and the Fighting Irish. But it is not an easy one to go up to South Bend to. We saw it for years with Baylor, how great it was to have those first 2 rounds at home, how comfortable it was to have those first 2 rounds in your home arena. not been the case the last 2 years. And quite honestly, Baylor has gotten two really crappy draws in those 2 years. Look, I mean, you make your own bed, right? But going up to Stores last year to face UConn, and now up to Notre Dame to face the Fighting Irish that are arguably, again, the hottest team in women's college basketball when you look at their body of work over the last couple of games and how they've blown away a couple of these teams and the ACC tournament champions. So I'm not excited about that. I'm hoping they're a little bit off on this one and Baylor gets a different 3 seed. NC State is one that is still very good, but is kind of limping into the tournament. UConn, I would love to actually have that matchup again. I know that would send you right back up to Stores, but which I was just complaining about, but I wouldn't mind that matchup with this UConn team. Baylor's going to be an underdog no matter what in the second round. Like that is the bed that they made. But Notre Dame is certainly the best of those 3 seeds. So not excited about that, but we will find out for sure on Sunday. Let me know what you think about that game. Get involved down in the comments below if that's a team you're afraid of or how far you think this women's team can go in this year's NCAA tournament. Let me know what you think about the men's matchup tonight. I am certainly excited for it. I know I'm not a big 12 tournament guy, but there's an open door there. So let me know what you think about that down in the comments below. And who is the X factor for this team? It might be more than one person, but for me, it is Langston Love. That's not taken away from anyone else on the team and their importance, but having Langston Love and his production coming back is like having a trade deadline acquisition in college basketball, which never happens. So I am excited about him coming back and praying to God, knocking on wood, whatever I need to do, that his ankle holds up and stays fine throughout this conference tournament so we have him in March Madness. Okay, get involved down in the comment section below for any of those, or maybe you just want to say thank you for making the show for you every day. I'm not looking for that, but you could put it down there if you want. We are your first listen today and every day, and I thank you so much for making us your first listen today and every day. We'll be back tomorrow with a recap on however Baylor fares in the quarterfinals of the Big 12 tournament. So be in tune for that. We'll be back tomorrow on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.